Welcome to Project Radical Remission. This is my 2022 update. Remember to hit like and subscribe. A pain I'd had for a little while got so bad I had to go to A&E. They immediately took it seriously and asked me to come back the next morning for an ultrasound. The ultrasound showed that further investigation was required. I was admitted to hospital. The CT scan revealed a cyst in my pancreas of 34mm. The doctors were concerned this might be cancer and the next step was an MRI. But the MRI machine in the NHS Trust had broken, so there were no MRIs for at least 2 weeks. Thanks to Bupa, I got a private MRI 3 days later. On this scan, it looked smaller. My pancreatic consultant had told me not to change my diet, but also that he thought the cyst was caused by likely sludge in my bile duct. Already vegetarian, I decided to de-sludge and immediately changed my diet to a high-protein one with lot of eggs to ease the pancreatitis pain. He banned me from having any alcohol, though I was already only a very light drinker, and he told me to drink a lot of water. The scans couldn't tell the doctors whether it was cancer or just a cyst, so I needed a biopsy. Before the biopsy, I had a PET scan. My cyst was metabolising sugar, so it was a strong pointer that it was cancerous. Bad news was it was also looking a lot bigger than last time. It had grown again on the next CT scan. There was a pathologist in the room to look at the cells as they came out from the biopsy. The biopsy also allowed the surgeon to see whether the tumour was entangled with a mesenteric vein and artery and whether he could operate. He couldn't, and the biopsy caused me a lot of pain. And the pathologist believed the cells were cancerous. And, for the icing on the cake, the surgeon's view was that, if it was cancer, it was already stage 4, as the positioning was such that my lymph nodes must already have been invaded, or very shortly would be, although this hadn't shown up on the PET scan. Surgery was off the table for now. On balance, I was okay with this, as a Whipple procedure did not sound great. Although cancer is never confirmed until the staining is complete, as identification of the specific types required, I was now working on the assumption it was cancer. I started to research stage 4 cancer survivors and what they had done. Couldn't find any obvious pancreatic cases, but over time I found Joe Tippins, Jane McClelland, Ivelisse Page and Mafambi Webb, and also found Chris Walk's site to have some useful resources. You normally need a confirmed biopsy to speak to an oncologist, but I started speaking to 4 oncologists so I could decide who to go with if it was cancer, which was looking very likely. The biopsy was inconclusive. The pathologist ran out of material before they could work out what cancer it was. I was readmitted to hospital with severe pain. The MRI showed the tumour was growing fast. But one of the oncologists believed, with his surgeon, that the tumour was resectable. I was in huge pain after the second biopsy and I'd lost about 5 kilos, but I was feeling positive. The staining from biopsy 2 said it wasn't any of the normal cancers, and I chopped all my hair off so I could make a wig out of it. But if it wasn't any of these cancers, then what was left? Or were the results just wrong? No chemo was offered to stop what was almost certainly cancer because they didn't know what type it was, and the specialist surgeon had reviewed again and now didn't think it was operable after all. Meanwhile, I was bitten by a tick. With deer in the garden, Lyme disease was probable, so I went to hospital. They gave me 1 week's doxycycline, and I started to feel better with less pain. Research revealed that it was also an anti-cancer drug. I bought more doxycycline online as a malaria drug for all the regular business travel to India I was doing. This also started me on the path of researching other common drugs with anti-cancer effects, a la Jane McClellan. Going into the next CT scan, my tick bite seemed like divine intervention, and I was optimistic that the changes I'd made would have reduced the cancer. I was surprised to learn it had grown again at a rate that shocked the eminent pancreatic oncologist I'd found, and that it had metastasised ferociously into my liver. On leaving the consultation room, I was galvanised to redouble my research and work out where I'd gone so wrong. It was a wake-up call to get more organised. I'd been playing at doing this without a proper plan, and my life was on the line. Listening to an interview with Jane McClelland, I came to understand cancer needs fuel to grow. It feeds on 3 things: sugar, glutamine and fat. I found her metabolic pathway map online and started working out what I needed to block the cancer feeding on each of these. I went vegan and stopped eating eggs. I think the eggs might have been why the cancer was growing so fast. To use this approach, I was missing a lot of drugs and started either acquiring or attempting to in various creative ways. It wasn't straightforward, and I didn't have a functional doctor to help me. I've been seriously unimpressed with the specialist cancer functional doctors I'd spoken to, who charged vast fees and then weren't prepared to think about my situation or review the work I'd done. They prided themselves on always giving the same advice and protocol to everyone. But that didn't work for me because my cancer was already more aggressive than normal for pancreatic cancer, and the outcomes for that, from my research looking for survivors, were devastatingly poor. I decided I had to go on my own and work it out myself, despite this making it more difficult to get the drugs. No doctor can prescribe drugs for an off-label condition, and none of the anti-cancer drugs were licensed for cancer. Besides, I needed to be in control. These are the things I did or am doing to heal cancer. I can't go into details on this summary video, so I plan to do videos on why I did each one of these in future. And I had a circulating DNA test, a blood biopsy, in the hopes that this would tell me what kind of cancer it was. I was frustrated because it was seemingly impossible to work out what I had. They thought it was sarcoma, and finally the staining matched. The type of sarcoma was leiomyosarcoma, which my mum died of, is extremely rare and extremely aggressive, and in the pancreas would be even rarer and even more aggressive. My mum died within 3 months when I was 23 and was only diagnosed via an autopsy. I adjusted my protocol to block for standard pancreatic cancer and sarcoma, likely the dreaded leiomyosarcoma. Sarcoma responds to chemo even more rarely than pancreatic cancer. From listening to Brian Van Tyne's work on leiomyosarcoma on YouTube and the successes he achieved in remission in some of his cases during his trials, I started reading how to block arginine pathways and decided on an off-label drug, a probiotic I found in research from the cheese industry, and an amino acid. I didn't do anything to block methionine, as I had already cut out almost all of that and felt I couldn't live without lentils or soy. And I was sceptical that lentils or soy could really be a problem. I started the sarcoma chemo and used meditation. The circulating DNA test results came back, but with my chemo brain fog, I wasn't paying attention. I was constantly in hospital with the side effects from chemo. I was meant to have chemo every 3 weeks for 8 cycles, but it would be 6 weeks before I could go for a second infusion. Yet, there were early signs I might be doing well against the cancer despite the side effects. I'm not feeling very well today.
Keeping me in
Clearly some infection.
sepsis, so
No chemo on reactive Monday. Protein has come down to 4, which is in the normal range, and previously was 74. I think the diet, walking and everything seems to be paying off. So low blood pressure has hit again. I am eating Marmite. Sometimes it's due to B12 deficiency. Still in the hospital. I've been put on a drip. See if dehydration is the reason why I keep feeling collapsy. I've changed my diet so radically, and it's vegan and no processed food and low GI and no sugar and no alcohol. I'm not getting any salt. It is causing my blood pressure to go lower, and I'm not producing enough red blood cells. Because I'm 2 months into the vegan diet now, I've basically used up my body's reserves. So the salt theory seems like it's working. So being discharged from acute medical unit again. So my dad is taking me home. A friend identified I might have been misdiagnosed, and I raised it with the oncologist. The MRI showed a dramatic reduction in the tumour and that several of the metastases had completely disappeared. I'd been misdiagnosed with sarcoma, they'd revisited the staining which didn't match, and sarcomas don't have KRAS mutations. I now think it's standard pancreatic cancer that the staining matches this, but they would leave me on the sarcoma chemo regime as my cancer was responding. I started chemo too, somewhat skinnier than last time. This nearly killed me, and I was seriously ill in hospital, transferring from my local hospital to one in London. We discovered that I was allergic to wheat, soya, peanuts, egg whites and milk. To work out what was wrong with me, the hospital in London did an MRI scan, but were confused not to be able to find my cancer.
Oh, are you joking?
No.
Oh my god, Lucy! You're joking! Oh my god! Amazing!
Cancer at all.
Oh my goodness! That is amazing! I knew you would do it. I knew you would. No, I tell all of my clients, I said, if anyone is going to cure her cancer, it's literally my sister.
Wow.
Oh,
That's
oh my god. You know this could not be
that
any
just doesn't
better.
even make sense.
There is absolutely nothing that you could have told me.
Oh my god.
That's anything
I'm so proud.
than
I'm so happy.
Oh my
It's
god,
like
I cannot wait to
it's
hold
a miracle.
you and squeeze
An
you and
absolute
just
miracle.
rub up on you.
Oh, nice. That's
Oh
very
my
good news.
god.
I'm so happy.
Are you serious?
I'm so happy.
I mean, you've done
And the kid,
I mean, if they ever heard of it,
it's just amazing.
It is amazing.
It's like the worst
It's pretty
fear.
good.
Obviously, other than it happening to the children, it's
Freaking.
the worst
amazing
fear.
is what that is. That's better
So
than
amazing.
good.
So proud of you. I knew you would do it. I had every single faith in you.
celebration.
Every single faith that you would do
It's
it.
unbelievable. What a girl you are. What a girl you are. I don't know anybody's ever done that in their life. You come out with something there, Lucy, to help everybody.
The oncologist radiologist needed to review the images. The oncologist was cautious. Some small bit of tumour being there was likely, and my cancer seemed to be a high-grade tumour which, even if gone, could come back very quickly, even more aggressively. She was right, her radiologist could still see some cancer. They sent the measurements and the screenshots, and it was larger even than 13mm. Accurate diagnosis of liver metastases in pancreatic cancer using MRIs depends on the number of years of radiologic experience. A radiologist with 20 years experience sees more than a radiologist with 10 years experience. I also found out that in July, my tumour had grown to 4.4 centimetres, not the 3.6 that I had previously been told. On my 22nd of August scan, a large percentage of the tumour was actually fluid. Likewise, on the 27th of September scan, where with fluid it was 2.2 centimetres, but without it was much more like 13. The tumour, which I treat as both sarcoma and pancreatic cancer, is stable at 11mm with microscopic liver mets. I'm at high risk for reoccurrence, but I hope all things that I'm doing will prevent this. Roll on 2023 and watch this space.